1. Mr. Speaker, how can we claim to be one holy, Catholic, and Apostolic Church if through the system we perpetuate, it has led to countless minorities, countless disenfranchised people to be left at the wayside because we were too focused on the aesthetics of what a good Catholic ought to be as opposed to what a good Catholic is? We on side government tell you that the underlying principle that the Church bases its entirety of dogma and actions following comes as a result of Jesus Christ's teachings to love both indiscriminately and inclusively. The problem that we have in status quo is that the type of people the Church needs to target the most are victims of their own self-perpetuated abuse. That a homosexual person has no incentive to listen to the homily of the priest because the priest is inherently against the valid choice of said homosexual person to love their own sex and gender. That the progressive person outright objects being in a church in the first place on the basis of all of its horrors and injustices in the past. Many examples we can pick here, but the point is, it is precisely because of the hypocrisy that the Church has shown in the past that has led to people to the point in which they want to turn away and disavow the Church as an institution. Now, we fully admit that the Church is not a monolith. It's subdivided into three main stakeholders: those who actively condemn those who sin, those who are indifferent, and those who already welcome these forms of minority groups. We tell you that even though the second and third are already probably acceptable of more liberalized ideals, those who actively condemn these people offer such a negative force into gaining back people who have turned away from the Church in the first place. So no matter how much OP may claim that its side can still tolerate, can still love, and appreciate these types of people, that they may claim to love the sinner and hate the sin, it's not true on the basis that the entirety of their institution, from the very beginning, has been a pivotal actor in making these injustices and tolerance manifest. If we want to truly adhere to the life and teaching of Jesus Christ, the bedrock of the Church, then we need to adjust it for the better. Three things in my DPM speech why there are inherent injustices within the Catholic Church that comes as a result from the system itself, why promoting liberalizing it enables people outside of the Church to opt in and forego the hate that they have, and why all of that has a major impact. First, a few rebuttals to LO. Number one, the Bible to an extent is dogmatic, but in previous economical councils like the Vatican II, we changed our stance on limbo, wherein previously all unbaptized children would go to be damned for eternity. They recognized that certain gray areas here in which God's mercy would shine upon them, to a large extent that we get from the previous speaker, is tautological and circular. This debate, as was said in the POI from my Prime Minister, isn't about how we should, but why we should. My partner already explained this in framing as to why even if we do not get full reform, we at least get a step towards that. Before, nuns could not be allowed to give communion, but now they are able to help in some instances. They can even give the sacrament of anointing of the sick. We push this frontier to liberalism and tell you that they would be able to do all of that without, they would be able to do what any male priest would do in the name of equality and equity. Number two, on the idea of schism, we think that a lot of great things do tend to come from divide. Before, in the name of apostasy, they did the Crusades and butchered many Muslims in the name of spreading Christianity. These led to schisms and divides which may be controversial, but we think is worth it if in the long run more people are able to feel included. This is what my partner told you about inclusivity for minorities. I think that rift is worth it if more people feel safe. On third, even if there is extremism and backlash coming from conservatives, we tell you that speaks more about them than it speaks about us. It shows you their true color, and they really aren't being truly moral or good. Catholicism, in order to be consistent with teaching, has a moral imperative to graduate towards being liberal and reconcile our aforementioned qualms that we all mentioned. In fact, being a moral Catholic should not have a singular standard of who you are and how you should be. This is exactly what we mean by apostolic, and what the Church should universally accept all of these people. First extension. Liberalizing the Church leads to people who have disavowed the Church to turn back. Note, an incredible amount of nuance is needed to understand this, so let's be nuanced. It is quite clear that while the Church that while the Catholic Church has a lot of preemptive measures to take into consideration to those who are marginalized. This looks like, this notion of hating the sin and loving the sinner, or having a lot of valid complaints and explanations as to the value of human life, human dignity, and other such synonymous types of terms. Our point isn't that the church as an ideal is something bad, but rather the implementation of the standard of love has been incredibly discriminatory. That is to say, even though the church says it practices tolerance, we tell you that the individual treatment of an LGBTQ plus person doesn't see that, doesn't feel the type of love the church gives to other people, like the poor. We tell you that all those thoughts and feelings are manifestations of the way the church has embedded itself into a traditional and narrow lens. What we get as a necessity of liberalizing isn't just a blanket policy of veiled words, of intolerance. It's of action. It's of the church admitting to itself that it has done wrong, that it has committed mistakes in the past, and is taking specific steps to enable the people they hurt to turn back. What are the impacts and why is this comparative? A major impact of this is that our side really does not settle for perception, for palatability. My PM literally told you that they'd get the Pope to condone abortion, gay marriage, female priests. You really can't just dismiss all those radical changes and frame it as if the church is just advertising itself. What it does do is solve the problem of the church becoming unimportant and becoming stagnant. All of the people who were marginalized, who were oppressed, at the very least now have an understanding that the church is willing to build a bridge towards them, and more than that, have them the ability to be able to turn back towards the church and actually listen to what they have to say. Practically speaking, it gains you all the benefits of making the church a safer institution to turn to for all people, something which makes it more on the center stage, especially in the world of rising secularization. But more than that, more than the practical level, if PM wants to base their argument on following the law of the Bible, we tell you that liberalizing the church and all of it contributes more to fulfilling the burden of the Lord's chief teachings of loving indiscriminately and indefinitely. For all those reasons, proud. Thank you.